School of Management has a record not only of undertaking that research, but of helping people to apply and understand that research and make it work within their organizations. So they've undertaken additional research recently, and so I'm very pleased that Valentina Battista from the School of HR, the School of Management, where she focuses on HRM, she's actually Program Director for HRM and management within the school, to share some of her research about, well, what's going on in the world of work and what technology changes are going to really impact the world of learning and development. So please join me in welcoming Dr. Valentina Battista.
Thank you for the introduction, and good morning, everyone. I'm very pleased to be here today to talk about how has and how will the changing nature of work impact learning and development. What I have to say that when we talk about changing nature of work, there are different factors impacting the nature of work. And they can be like political factor, economical factor, social factor, technological factor. But nowadays, and more recently, increasing attention has been paid on the impact of technology in changing the structure of work. And this is because perhaps technology has had a huge impact on our life and has changed our life in different ways. So we say in general that technology has had a positive impact on our life, and that is because most of the time it has also provided us with greater choice. I may look younger than I am actually, but I remember that when I was a child and hanging around, with my friends, and we wanted to listen to a song, we used to go to this social club, and we had to buy like a token, and it was like the equivalent of 50p, and then we can choose one of the songs listed in a jukebox. But how about today? We have app for that. We just download an app on our phone, and something like Spotify, and we can choose whatever song we like, and we can just listen to them. We can just stream them online, right? It's really different right now. So in general, when I say that technology has provided us greater choice, that has improved some aspect of our life, more in general. But also, research suggests that technology is impacting on work and the way how we work. In particular, we are seeing a rapid growth in the use of the latest sophisticated technology in the workplace. And most of the time, this is also related to this idea that technology allows us to do more. There are some research suggesting that, for example, around 50% of the US job will be automated in the next decade. And academic commentary on that is quite divided between optimistic, who, although acknowledge the challenge that technology will bring, they also welcome the transformative side of technology because they think that technology can also promote more meaningful form of work. There are also the pessimistic. The pessimistic, they predict a jobless future. And there are also the skeptic, which question some of this scenario, and at the same time, they predict some limited change in the workplace. Amongst all this propaganda, however, we at Cranfield, with my colleague, we decided to undertake a more evidence-based approach in order to understand what are the evidence in relation to this prediction for the future. I'm going to share some of the findings from this research with you. And this suggests, for example, that automation is impacting work, and historically, automation has impacted work. In general, what we found is that an increased number of tasks have been automated over the last decades, and therefore, most of the time, the automation is also limited to the manual task. However, the impact of technology, and what I mean is that the advancement in technology is also contributing to the automation of subcognitive tasks. Like, for example, in the last decades, organizations are starting to adopt automated cognitive process, like in the law and in the final service. For example, law firms are adopting cognitive automating process in order to scan information from legal documents, and also this is going to help them to assist with pre-trial results. So the automation in general is going to change the structure of the work in general, but also the skills that organizations are going to look for in the near future. We at Cranfield, what we did with this project, we tried to identify what are the technological trends that are impacting work and that will impact work in the near future. And automation is one of them. But together with automation, we find that, for example, artificial intelligence is going to impact work in the next 10 years. And that is because artificial intelligence in general has been seen as the analysis of the data in order to elaborate models that can predict and anticipate future change. But usually, artificial intelligence is also seen as machine learning, which is a branch of the artificial intelligence that allows computer systems to learn from data, example, and experience. The application of artificial intelligence in our life are widespread. It seems that the list is growing fast. If we think about speech recognition application like Siri, Alexa, that we know and we are familiar with, but also with searching engines that can rank the website based on the end user preferences. So the application of artificial intelligence in our life, but also in our working life, seems to be quite powerful and promising for the future. For example, we came across an organization, a call center organization, that started to use artificial intelligence based on speech recognition in order to substitute some of the human workforce. So this seems that artificial intelligence is going to have a huge impact on our life in the next 10 years or so. The second trend we identify is related to robotics. So robotics, when we talk about robotics, is really related to the automation of the system that we just discussed about. But that is because the cost of automation is decreasing. And this means that it's creating incentives, economic incentive for organizations to increasingly adopt automation in the workplace and substitute the human workforce with automated process. However, also for robotics, it seems that the application on our everyday life is quite increasing over time. If we think about the robot that now can perform simple tasks also in our daily life, like cleaning, vacuuming, and routine cooking, and the data also show that the sale of this kind of product are increasing over time about 20% per year. The third technological trend we identify is going to impact work in the next 10 years or so is related to the use of augmented and virtual reality. And proponents of this technology feel that this is going to have a huge impact and this is going to be vital in the organizational landscape. And the reason is because organizations are increasingly trying to attract and retain top talent, and they want also to validate and measure training and certification, and they also want to try to reduce risk in the organization in a free risk environment as well. So proponents of augmented and virtual reality, and we will see that also later on in referring to the training, they think that this kind of technology is going to be at the forefront for the next year across all industry. And the fourth technological trend we identify, which is going to be an impact, which is expected to be an impact on work, is related to blockchain. Blockchain is a general purpose technology which has emerged to support the transaction and information exchange, which required a high level of security. I would say that the big application of blockchain has been in the financial sector in 2009 with Bitcoin. But since then, the application of blockchain across industry has grown really fast. So there are applications in the energy sector, in the financial sector, government, supply chain, logistics as well. Some of the experts also predict that blockchain is going to have a huge impact on organization, as HR in particular is going to adopt blockchain in order to store information, but also for validate candidate profiles. Another technological trend we identified is related to wearable technologies. The wearable technology, again, research suggests that the impact is going to be quite important in the future, and that is because it is believed that they can provide 3 different kinds of information. First, by tracking movement during a working day, they can keep employees informed about their level activity during a working day, which also means that they can be more aware about their level activity and so about their well-being in general. So this is the first kind of information which which organization can be used in order to improve also the well-being of employees. The second kind of information is related to kind of measuring what is the time and the motion required to perform a task during a working day, which means that organization accessing to this data and analyzing to this data can also think to restructure the workstation and the workplace in a more efficient way. And the third kind of information is related to quantify physical function that can enable to understand how humans work when performing a task. The last, but not least, I would say, technological trend that we identify is going to have a huge impact on work and is already having a huge impact on work is related to digital platforms. Digital platforms, perhaps, are the most important aspect of this digital revolution in general, and they tend to set rule a computational system in order to link people across the world, people that have different interests, like, for example, good digital platform like Amazon, eBay. They create a link between product buyer and sellers. But there is also an impact on work because we have digital platforms that can allow people to find job, apply for job, find job, and also doing job online. And for this reason, digital platform seems that is going to have a huge impact. So these technological trends, together, I would say, with some more macro-level trend, like globalization or changing demographic at work, or also political uncertainty, seems that are going to have a huge impact on the structure of work more in general. And what the findings suggest from this research is that, for example, employment relations are going to be based on self-employment contract, and that there will be increasing number of type of contingent work, such as zero-hour contracts, open talent, and gig economies. And this kind of works and employment relation, if you want, are going to provide more flexibility in relation to work for organizations. But at the same time, they also seem to be a kind of forms of work which are kind of precarious. So the increasing number of organizations that are going to use this kind of contract and working relationship with their employees are going also to have an impact on the employee well-being, which means that people are going to be more concerned about their work. And so organizations need to think about that, and they need to think how they can ensure that their employees are not putting at risk by the fact that they are, precarious form of work, and so they perhaps there will be a lack of support for them. So this finding suggests that there will be this increasing focus on employee well-being in the next future, which is due to this precarity of work, but it's also related to the flexibility that using technology will allow, in a sense that there is a measured concern around the increasing connectivity for people at work, which is going to impact on the stress level of employee, but also on their mental health, for example. And in these scenarios where organizations are going to be more flexible in relation, organization, but also people can be more flexible in relation to their work, it seems that there is a decline of the physical workplace, which also, because people can now work, as we said before, they can work everywhere in the world, which means that employees will become increasingly dispersed. And there is a need then for organization for creating space and creating occasion for the employees for social interaction. And that is not just because it's going to become a challenge to build a relationship in the workplace, but also because research suggests that by interacting in the workplace, this can enhance creativity, for example, in the workplace, and can also promote better performance. Indeed, organization, in the attempt to try to monitor this downside of the increased connectivity and this flexibility of work, are redesigning their workplace in order to promote face-to-face interaction. So they are trying to facilitate the interaction between employees in order, as I say, to boost their performance and productivity as well. In these new scenarios of new ways of working and new structure of working, it seems that organizations are going to look for new skill, new knowledge, skill, and ability. And in general, research suggests that the organization are going to look for a more high-qualified, creative, and flexible working force, which is in line with the more complex and strategic work environment as well. So our research suggests that organization will look for skill in managing complexity, in creativity, in flexibility, and people management. And when we say people manager, a particular attention has also be paid in searching for skill who are like leadership skill for a team, which are made by human and machine as well. This kind of findings seems also to be in line with the report published by the World Economic Forum on the future of jobs, which highlight that complex problem solving, critical thinking, creativity, and people management will be the top 4 skills for the future. Now, this kind of prediction, if we wanted to call them prediction, also highlight that, for example, for organizations thinking about how they can also develop their workforce, retooling and reskilling seems to be the norm at this stage. And for that reason, it is important to consider how learning and development need to adapt in order to deliver organizational effectiveness. In particular, it seems that there is an increased expectation from people to receive the personalized, flexible training, which means that although this kind of training, as we have seen also this morning, like coaching, for example, in the literature, it is quite well documented what are the advantages of offering this kind of training. However, organizations could also are not always in the position to offer this kind of training to all the workforce. And there are some of the technology that we just discussed about that can be helpful in order to deliver this kind of training. Like, for example, integrating machine learning, so using artificial intelligence and integrating machine learning into training process could be helpful for organization, which means that they can use some of this technology like machine learning in order to understand what are the paths of learning of their employees. And based on that, they can explore what are the weaknesses, the strengths, and they can also understand what are the level of engagement, interest, and build on that, they can provide a more individualized training experience, also based on their skill level and job responsibilities. A second expectation that technology and the new flexible working is creating is also this idea of having and receiving a constant feedback for people. And again, it may be impossible sometimes, for a manager to be available all the time to answer to employee questions. And in this case, some conversational I call them here conversational assistant, but AI-enabled conversational assistant, as I said before, like Alexa, Siri, they can support organization in doing that because they can answer on real time to employee questions. And because they are built on really powerful speech recognition, and that is based, the technology behind that is machine learning, they can also be trained in order to assess employees, provide feedback, but also virtually in tutoring, for example. Moreover, one of the technology that we just discussed about, like wearable technology, they can be used by organization in order to support team developing. And this is the case of one particular technology, which is called sociometric badges, which allow organization to measure the path of communication within the team and ultimately within the organization. And based on this, they can understand what are the team dynamics, and they can also provide support in order to facilitate the achievement of goals. So some of this technology, early adopter of this specific type of technology, which I say is called sociometric badges, some early adopter that, what they found is that facilitating team interaction within the organization, as I said before, could build performance and results of the organization. And so they start to restructure the organization in order to facilitate team interaction across the whole organization. And finally, organization, in order to attract, as we say, and retain talent, they are expected also to provide high-quality training. And for that reason, we have, as we said before, augmented reality and virtual reality, which are believed to be at the forefront of innovation for that. Early adopter of this kind of technology has been in the military sector and the healthcare sector, where military could be trained in a safe environment using virtual and augmented reality, and doctors have used this kind of technology for treat patients with conditions such as phobia or post-traumatic stress disorder, and surgeons can also, sharpen their skill in a risk-free environment. So virtual reality and augmented reality have really started to be implemented in the workplace and are changing the way how people can be trained. For example, I was just reading an article on that. The UK network Rail have used virtual reality this year to train people that need to assess the site security. At the same time, the retail Walmart has used the virtual reality to train the shop floor to navigate in the busy time, like the Black Friday, stuff like that, in order to navigate the shop, but at the same time also be sure that they can refurnish the stock at the same time. So they are going to entering, I think that between all the technology, virtual reality is the first one that will enter the workplace also for training employees. So in general, we have found that there are technologies there. Technology is providing us greater choice. However, organizations need to think about how they can best benefit from the use of this technology and how they can build efficiency in relation to that. So to conclude my presentation, my suggestion will be start now to take the time in order to think about your strategy for the future. Because technology is there, but we need to think about where we want it to be in the future and how we want it to get there. Thank you for listening.
A few minutes for questions. So, anybody got the first question? Because I've got one. Yes, gentleman over here. Have we got a mic coming to you there? Terrific. Thank you.
Hi, thanks for the presentation. Just a question, how do you think we need to manage the ethical dilemmas that come up now as we're actually looking at the potential for all of this technology?
Yeah, I mean, that is a challenge, I can tell you. Also, just for conducting this research, I have to face a lot around ethics, especially when we talk about wearable devices. So there are a lot of concern or using these, and there are some, regulation that are not working with us, I will say, around that. But my advice will be, I think that the ethics is really related to wearable devices in particular. So my advice will be that there is going to be a challenge, and if we can start from our organization, with people that want to collaborate and try to understand how we can change the future by using this kind of technology. So the first thing that we can do at the moment, I think that is just asking people, they volunteer for taking part of that, because we cannot, especially with wearable devices where there are really sensitive information, that is a challenge at the moment, and as I say, regulation is not helping us with that.
Any others at the minute? I've got one which sort of touches on the same area, I think, around ethics and around how we deal with this. I did a piece recently around, in simple terms, I said, if you are employing people on 0 hours contracts, you cannot have a learning culture. Because the very basis of whether or not you are in work tomorrow and you have security means that your likelihood of developing within the direction which the organization requires is limited, because by definition I might not be working there next week, let alone in a year's time. So I might take responsibility for developing my own skills, but those may or may not coincide with the skills that the organization thinks it needs to fulfill its strategy in the future. So how does that tension resolve itself, particularly if we're talking about investing in areas where actually quite expensive technology, VR, AR, things like that, machine learning, this costs money to build and to build well. So how does that tension resolve itself? Is there any indication from the work that you've done, the people you've spoken to, about saying, yeah, there's a way of resolving that and it looks like this?
No, in conducting this research, what we found is that there is an increased expectation for people to take responsibility, as you say, for their own training as well, especially when they decide to work in using, social 0 hour contracts and stuff like that. So the organization is building a world where they can ensure and reskilling people in order to avoid losing the workforce. But at the same time, when people, I think that people start to be aware of that. And they know that they need to invest on their self, kind of training and stuff like that. Organizations are providing and are thinking to provide definitely training for skilling people and reskilling people, also using technology most of the time, sometimes. But at the same time, we found that there is an increased expectation for people also to invest in their self-development.
Right. So I think there's an interesting issue. It came up with Rachel's piece this morning, where she talked about utilizing their technology framework and their technology based around the Fuse platform and all the rest of it within Germany, where you've got works councils. And I wonder if maybe there is a requirement to shift towards a change in employment legislation, regulation, before this stuff really starts to happen in a way which meets some of the ethical dilemmas that it potentially throws up. I don't know if you're again, whether your research kind of looked at what the most appropriate way of managing the workplace is if everything looks like this.
Really, at the moment, we didn't go so far to understand how they will do that.
Okay.
So these are the potential for technology, for organization to use them in order to train it, and most of the time for not losing their people, because the kind of set of skills they are looking for are going to change in the future. So they wanted to understand how they can retool, how they can reskilling people in order to not losing people in the workplace. About the example from this morning from Rachel around, the kind of work council, depending on the context, as I say, I just named here the technology that are going to impact on work, but there are also macro trends, like, for example, we say, regulation in general, political uncertainty, we don't know. And there will be work to be done in relation to that in order to allow also the use of this kind of technology. I personally was trying to investigate how you can use wearable devices, for example, in performance measurement in general, but this is a challenge for me because I cannot use people information on that. So, there is stuff that need to be doing that in order also to enable some of this changing to be happening in the future.
Any other questions from the floor at this stage? Just lady there.
Is there much research on the impact on well-being for people of this level of use of technology, the amount of time they spend using the technology? Because that's not going to work for everybody.
You mean using technology? Yeah. So some of the research suggests that the increasing using of technology can impact on well-being of people due to the increased connectivity as well. Workload, and sometimes they also result in a really poor work-life balance. And that is the reason why the research is really around the impact on that. But in relation to the use of, for example, wearable devices for well-being, what the research suggests is that organizations can use that data in order to monitoring employee well-being and also put in place some measure in order to enhance the well-being in the workplace as well.
One more? Okay, I think we've exhausted the questions from the floor. So a couple of things. One, stuff to look out for, opportunities to be taken. Be afraid. Entire magazines have now been created using AI. No human journalists were involved in that process at all. Learning programs that are being talked about out there are being created and self-created repeatedly without learning and development people. There is an insurance company a couple of years ago in Japan who did away with all of their claims handlers. They promised they would not reduce the levels of payouts on those claims as a result of that innovation, and they expected to get a return on the $1.4 million investment in 12 months through savings in staff costs alone. Given the number of people who worked there, that meant those jobs were all paid at the equivalent of $47,000 a year. That's mid-level management, the cognitive roles that Valentina was talking about, and they have been done away with by AI. So we have some opportunities, and they are great opportunities. Interestingly, I've seen wearables used in conferences where people voluntarily wear a little beacon and wander around the conference, and anybody with the app on their phone can say, this chap over here is an expert on this stuff, I'll go and have a conversation with him. Because that's what's loaded via the wearable technology. So some interesting opportunities there. We have to manage the anxiety that it's going to create and help people prepare for what this new future looks like. Because much as Mr. Trump tells us that the steel industry in America has been decimated by jobs being exported to America. 400% of the equivalent jobs that were exported were done away with automation since 1962. 4 times the number of jobs that were exported overseas. So an America First policy which says, by the way, we built the robots, means there'll be fewer jobs, not more, in those places that supported them. So we need to tell some truths about this stuff. We need to prepare people for it, but we need to base it on the research. So join me in thanking Valentina Battista for sharing that research with us.